Some of you are confused because nothing looks different, but everything is changing. You're waiting for noise, for movement, for proof, and God is working in the quiet. You've been asking for signs, and heaven has been answering in silence. Because God doesn't always announce what he's about to do. Sometimes he prepares it privately so it can stand publicly. And just because you don't see his hands moving doesn't mean his plan has stalled. You thought by now there would be clarity. You thought by now there would be confirmation, but instead there's this uncomfortable stillness where faith has to do the talking. And that stillness isn't absence, it's alignment. God is rearranging things you prayed about years ago. He's closing loops you forgot you opened. He's protecting you from outcomes you weren't ready to survive. While you're worried that time is passing you by, God is positioning you for timing that won't miss. While you're questioning whether you heard him right, he's ensuring that when it happens, it won't have to be repeated. This is the season where trust matters more than evidence, where obedience outweighs understanding, where faith has to rest even when the plan hasn't been explained. If God were loud right now, you might interfere. If he revealed everything, you might rush it. So he's working silently, strengthening your patience, deepening your discernment, and building a foundation that won't collapse when 2026 shows up with weight, responsibility, and purpose. Just because it's quiet doesn't mean it's empty. God is in the silence, and the silence is working for you. Silence does not mean stagnation. God often does his deepest work where there is no visible movement, and that truth challenges everything in us that equates progress with noise. We live in a world that celebrates announcements, updates, timelines, and measurable outcomes. So when life goes quiet, we assume something is wrong. We assume we're behind. We assume we're behind. We assume nothing is happening. But God has never needed an audience to be effective. Some of his most intentional work happens when there are no witnesses, no confirmations, and no visible signs to reassure you that you're on the right path. Silence is uncomfortable because it removes our sense of control. When God isn't speaking loudly, when doors aren't opening obviously, when prayers aren't answered quickly, we're forced to sit with uncertainty. And uncertainty exposes what we're really trusting. Silence reveals whether your faith is built on God's character or on constant reassurance. Because if you only trust him when he's explaining himself, then you're not trusting him at all. We confuse silence with absence, but God's silence is often a sign of focus. When he's quiet, it's because he's concentrating on details you cannot see yet. He's adjusting timing, realigning people, reshaping circumstances, and strengthening you internally. Just because nothing is shifting around you doesn't mean nothing is shifting within you. Growth doesn't always announce itself. Maturity doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes with stillness. Think about how much of God's work is hidden by design. Seeds grow underground, roots form where no one can applaud them. Foundations are laid beneath the surface before anything rises into view. God values what lasts, not what looks impressive quickly. So he prioritizes depth over display. And silence creates depth. When God goes quiet, he's often teaching you how to listen differently. Not for instructions, but for alignment. Not for details, but for trust. Silence trains your discernment. It teaches you how to recognize God without needing constant direction. It deepens your spiritual hearing so that when he does speak, you're not distracted by noise. Stagnation feels heavy. It feels like decay. It feels like nothing is alive. But silence is alive with intention. Silence is active. Silence is purposeful. In silence, God confronts habits that motion would hide. He exposes thought patterns that productivity would distract you from. He slows you down enough to deal with things you kept postponing because life was moving too fast. We panic in silence because we're afraid of being forgotten, afraid of missing opportunities, afraid that time is slipping away. But God is not bound by your calendar. He's not anxious about your future. He's not rushing to catch up to anything. He sees the whole picture, and he knows exactly when movement will serve you and when stillness will protect you. Silence protects you from premature exposure. If God moves you too fast, you might step into something you're not emotionally ready to carry. You might gain visibility before you gain stability. You might receive responsibility before you develop resilience. Silence allows God to strengthen your inner life so your outer life doesn't crush you later. We often say we want growth, but we resist the quiet required to produce it. Silence strips away distractions and forces you to confront yourself. It shows you what you rely on when nothing is happening. It reveals whether your peace is dependent on progress or presence. God uses silence to teach you how to be grounded even when life feels suspended. There are conversations God is having with your heart in silence that would be drowned out by success. There are lessons he's teaching you about humility, patience, and surrender that only land when there's nothing else competing for your attention. Silence becomes sacred when you realize it's not empty, it's full of formation. In silence, God reshapes your identity. When you're not busy proving yourself, you learn who you are without performance. When you're not achieving milestones, you learn how to value yourself beyond productivity. God refuses to let your worth be defined by output alone, so he creates seasons where output slows and identity deepens. We mistake visible movement for spiritual health, but God looks for rootedness. He looks for endurance. He looks for faith that doesn't collapse when there's nothing to celebrate. Silence builds that kind of faith. It teaches you how to trust God when obedience doesn't come with immediate reward. Silence also refines your motives. When no one is watching, when no one is affirming, when nothing is happening, you discover why you're really following God. Is it for results or relationship? Is it for outcomes or obedience? Silence removes the extras and leaves you face to face with your intentions. God's silence doesn't mean he's undecided. It means he's intentional. He's aligning things so precisely that if he rushed it, it would unravel. What feels slow to you is often exact to him. Timing is part of the miracle, not an obstacle to it. There are things God is saving you from by staying quiet. If he revealed everything too soon, you might interfere, you might rush. You might settle for partial fulfillment because full fulfillment feels too far away. Silence keeps you dependent instead of demanding. In silence, faith matures from emotional to rooted. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop panicking at every delay. You learn how to stand firm without updates. That kind of faith will carry you through seasons where leadership is heavy and decisions are costly. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means something important is happening slowly. God values process because process produces stability. Without process, blessings become burdens. Without silence, growth becomes shallow. You're not being ignored. You're being prepared. God is working beneath the surface, strengthening what no one can see so that what everyone will see later can stand. He's developing endurance so you don't quit when things get hard. He's building patience so you don't sabotage progress out of fear. Silence also teaches you how to rest without guilt. We've learned to associate rest with laziness and stillness with failure, but God calls rest holy. Silence gives you permission to stop striving and start trusting. It reminds you that God can work without your constant effort. When God is silent, he's often repositioning you internally before moving you externally. He's aligning your thoughts, your desires, your expectations. He's removing attachments that would compete with what's coming next. Silence simplifies you so you're not weighed down by unnecessary things. There are breakthroughs that would not survive if they came during noise. They require clarity, focus, and maturity that only silence can produce. God is not trying to impress you. He's trying to establish you. Silence also reveals spiritual muscle. It shows you how strong your faith really is when there's nothing feeding it emotionally. When worship is a choice, not a reaction. When prayer is persistence, not desperation. That strength will serve you later. You may feel invisible right now, but invisibility can be a gift. It protects you from comparison. It shields you from pressure. It gives you space to grow without scrutiny. God hides what he values until it's ready. Silence doesn't mean stagnation. Stagnation is decay, but silence is incubation. God is nurturing something fragile, something significant, something that needs time to develop. Incubation requires warmth, protection, and stillness. Every quiet moment is shaping you. Every unanswered prayer is stretching your trust. Every delayed outcome is strengthening your endurance. God is teaching you how to wait without weakening. This season is not wasted. It's not empty. It's not pointless. It's precise. God is doing work you will appreciate later, even if you don't understand it now. He's making sure that when movement returns, you move with wisdom instead of urgency, confidence instead of fear, faith instead of panic. Silence is not God stepping back. It's God leaning in. It's him working so carefully that he doesn't rush the process. It's him protecting you from shortcuts that would cost you more than they give. It's him building a foundation that won't crack under pressure. When the noise returns, when the doors open, when the movement begins, you'll realize that the silence was necessary. It strengthened you, it clarified you, it anchored you, and what God builds in silence is always strong enough to stand when the world starts watching again. Delays are divine protection, aligning, timing, people, and purpose behind the scenes, even when all you can feel is frustration. Because when you're in it, delay doesn't feel holy. It feels inconvenient. It feels unfair. It feels like life is moving on without you while you're stuck watching from the sidelines. And the hardest part is that delay doesn't come with explanations. God doesn't always tell you why he's slowing things down. He just asks you to trust that he knows something you don't. We've been taught to believe that fast is favored, that quick answers mean God is pleased, and that waiting is a sign you missed something. But God is not intimidated by time. He doesn't rush outcomes because he understands consequences. He knows that timing isn't just about when something happens, it's about what happens when it does. A blessing released too early can damage you. An opportunity arriving before alignment can derail you. So God delays not to deny, but to defend. Delay protects you from people who would have mishandled your heart. There are relationships you were praying would work out, connections you were desperate to secure, partnerships you thought were necessary for your future. But God saw motives you couldn't see. He saw insecurity, competition, manipulation, and misalignment hiding behind smiles and promises. Delay kept you from bonding with people who would have drained you instead of developed you. Delay also protects you from versions of yourself you hadn't outgrown yet. If God had answered that prayer when you first asked, you would have walked into it with fear instead of faith. Pride instead of humility, desperation instead of discernment. You would have relied on your strength instead of his guidance. Delay gives God room to mature you so you don't sabotage what you prayed for once you receive it. We underestimate how much timing matters to purpose. You can be called and still be early. You can be gifted and still be premature. God knows the exact moment when your confidence will be stable, your faith will be rooted, and your character will be ready. Until then, delay becomes a shield. It blocks what would have overwhelmed you and preserves what needs more time to develop. Delay is God synchronizing details you cannot control. While you're focused on one door, God is aligning 10 others. He's working on people you haven't met yet. He's shifting systems you're not aware of. He's moving resources into place. He's arranging conversations, transitions, and opportunities so that when it happens, it flows instead of forces. What looks like waiting is often coordination. We get impatient because we see delay as wasted time, but God sees it as preparation time. Nothing in delay is idle. Every moment is being used to strengthen your discernment, deepen your trust, and clarify your direction. God is removing distractions so you don't confuse activity with assignment. Delay teaches you how to let go of control. It confronts your need to manage outcomes. It reveals how often you try to rush God instead of follow him. And in that discomfort, God teaches surrender. Not resignation, but surrender. The kind that says, I trust you even when I don't understand you. There are doors God delays opening because if he opened them now, you would settle instead of stretch. You would accept what's comfortable instead of pursuing what's transformative. Delay keeps your hunger alive. It preserves your expectancy. It prevents you from shrinking your vision just to feel secure. Delay protects your future impact. God isn't just thinking about you, he's thinking about who will be affected by your obedience. He's thinking about the people you'll lead, the lives you'll touch, the responsibility you'll carry. If he rushed you into position without preparation, the weight of it could crush you or the people connected to you. Sometimes delay is God saving you from repeating cycles. If he answered too quickly, you might repeat the same patterns in a new environment. You might make the same mistakes with different faces. Delay gives God space to heal what's broken so you don't recreate pain in the next season. Delay also reveals idols. It shows you what you think you can't live without. It exposes what you believe will finally make you happy. And God, in his mercy, refuses to let your peace be dependent on anything temporary. So he delays it until your heart is anchored in him instead of the outcome. We often ask God to hurry because we're uncomfortable with uncertainty, but uncertainty is where faith grows. Certainty feeds control, but uncertainty feeds trust. Delay stretches your faith muscles so they don't collapse under pressure later. God uses delay to refine your discernment. You learn how to say no without guilt. You learn how to wait without panicking. You learn how to listen instead of rushing. That discernment becomes critical when options multiply and decisions carry greater consequences. Delay protects you from shortcuts. Shortcuts look attractive when you're tired of waiting. They promise relief without responsibility, but shortcuts always cost more in the long run. God delays to keep you from choosing paths that look easier but lead to regret. Delay also gives God room to reposition you emotionally. It helps you process disappointment honestly instead of burying it. It teaches you resilience. It strengthens your emotional endurance so rejection doesn't derail you and success doesn't define you. God's delays are intentional pauses, not permanent stops. He's not stalling your life. He's stabilizing it. He's making sure the foundation is strong enough to support what's coming. Without that foundation, growth would be unsustainable. Delay realigns your priorities. It forces you to ask why you want what you want. It challenges your motives. It purifies your intentions. God wants your desire to be rooted in purpose, not pressure. There are blessings that require precise timing. Too early, and they would be misunderstood. Too late, and they would lose impact. God knows exactly when the moment will produce maximum fruit. Delay ensures that moment doesn't miss its mark. Delay also teaches you how to trust God privately before celebrating publicly. It builds intimacy. It deepens prayer. It strengthens reliance. That relationship becomes your anchor when life speeds up again. You may feel like delay is holding you back, but often it's holding you together. It's keeping you from falling apart under pressure you're not ready to carry. God's protection doesn't always feel like rescue. Sometimes it feels like resistance. Delay gives God time to remove the wrong voices. It filters out people who are only present for access. It reveals who supports you when nothing is happening. That clarity is invaluable for the future God is preparing. Delay protects you from comparison. When everyone else seems ahead, God pulls you back to focus on your own lane. He reminds you that your life is not a competition, but a calling. God is aligning timing so that when the door opens, it opens smoothly. No forcing, no striving, no manipulation, just alignment. That alignment brings peace instead of pressure. Delay builds trust beyond explanation. It teaches you how to believe God without constant reassurance. That trust becomes your strength in seasons when leadership is heavy and decisions are lonely. Delay ensures that when you arrive, you're ready. Ready emotionally, ready spiritually, ready mentally, ready relationally. God cares more about readiness than speed. What feels like delay is actually God standing between you and unnecessary pain. It's Him saying, not yet, because I love you too much to rush this. It's Him working behind the scenes, aligning what you can't see, protecting what you can't imagine, and preparing a future that will make sense of every moment you thought was wasted. God's quiet seasons build trust, maturity, and discernment before public breakthroughs. And the first thing we have to understand is that what you don't see in silence is far more powerful than what you do see in motion. Because our culture tells us that visibility equals value and speed equals success, we often panic when God slows things down. But God's strategy isn't about impressing us with movement. It's about preparing us for moments that will require depth, resilience, and wisdom. Quiet seasons are His way of strengthening what you cannot yet see, but will rely on heavily when the time for breakthrough arrives. Trust is forged in the unseen. When everything is quiet, when doors remain closed, and when progress seems stagnant, that's when faith is tested most deeply. You begin to realize whether you trust God for the outcome or simply for the comfort of progress. Do you believe Him when there's no visible reward? Do you worship Him when life feels still? Do you obey Him when circumstances suggest you should give up? These quiet seasons force you to move beyond superficial faith and develop a trust that doesn't rely on appearances. Maturity is cultivated when the spotlight is off. In quiet seasons, you're not performing, you're not being observed or validated by others. God uses these times to refine your character, exposing habits and attitudes that could hinder your growth if left unchecked. He brings to the surface impatience, pride, fear, and doubt so that you can confront them. These internal confrontations are uncomfortable, but they are essential because the character required to handle public success cannot be manufactured overnight. It has to be forged quietly, consistently, and deliberately. Discernment develops when God slows life down and forces you to make decisions without external confirmation. You learn how to distinguish His voice from your own desires and from the opinions of others. You learn to recognize guidance from God that doesn't come with fanfare or immediate validation. These lessons shape your spiritual perception, allowing you to navigate future opportunities with clarity and confidence. When breakthrough comes, you will not be swayed by every promise that looks good on paper. You will discern what aligns with God's timing and purpose. Quiet seasons also cultivate patience. We often think patience is passive, but true patience is active. It is the discipline of waiting while continuing to prepare. During quiet times, God tests how you handle delay, teaching you to remain faithful even when it feels like nothing is happening. He wants you to understand that timing is a vital component of every plan. A rushed breakthrough can bring exposure without preparation, blessing without foundation, and success without sustainability. Patience ensures that when doors open, you are ready to walk through them fully equipped. These seasons strengthen your resilience. Life will always have moments of uncertainty, setbacks, and delays, but quiet seasons train you to endure without giving up. They teach you how to rise after disappointment, to remain steadfast after rejection, and to continue believing when circumstances suggest otherwise. Resilience is essential for leadership, influence, and impact. Without it, even opportunities ordained by God can be squandered. Quiet seasons ensure that your foundation is solid enough to handle what lies ahead. Trust, maturity, and discernment are interconnected. Trust allows you to surrender control, maturity allows you to respond wisely, and discernment allows you to act accurately. God works on all three simultaneously during periods of silence, preparing you for public breakthroughs that will require balance, wisdom, and faithfulness. Each day in the quiet is a brick in the foundation of your future, even if it doesn't feel significant in the moment. Faith is also refined during quiet seasons. You learn to believe God's promises without visible proof. You learn that God's plans are reliable even when human plans fail. You learn that His timing is perfect even when it conflicts with your own sense of urgency. This faith becomes unshakable because it has been tested and strengthened when circumstances were unsteady. When public breakthroughs come, you will not rely on luck or timing, but on the faith that was built quietly over time. God's quiet work also aligns your relationships. He positions you around the right people while separating you from those who may hinder your progress. During silence, you learn which voices to trust and which to ignore. You see who supports your growth and who merely distracts. These relational alignments are crucial because success and influence cannot be achieved in isolation. Quiet seasons prepare you relationally, ensuring that your support system is ready to uphold you when the spotlight comes. During quiet seasons, God also works on your emotional intelligence. You learn to navigate frustration, manage expectations, and maintain peace in uncertainty. These emotional lessons are critical for handling responsibility, leadership, and influence in the future. Emotional maturity ensures that when breakthroughs occur, you respond with grace rather than reaction, with wisdom rather than impulsivity, and with perspective rather than pride. Preparation and silence also include spiritual refinement. God teaches you to pray more effectively, to seek Him with deeper intent, and to worship with sincerity. You develop spiritual disciplines that sustain you through trials, opportunities, and responsibilities that lie ahead. These practices are often invisible to the world, but they form the backbone of your capacity to steward success faithfully. Quiet seasons strengthen your character in ways public approval never could. They force honesty, integrity, and authenticity. You cannot perform for an audience in silence. You can only be yourself. And it is in these moments of authenticity that God shapes qualities like humility, compassion, and perseverance, qualities that are essential for sustainable impact. Public recognition can amplify flaws if the foundation is weak, but God ensures the foundation is solid through private preparation. Discernment learned in quiet seasons also protects you from deception. You gain the ability to identify opportunities that are distractions, to recognize motivations that are self-serving, and to navigate challenges that would compromise your mission. This discernment ensures that when God's breakthrough comes, you do not chase what looks like success, but walk into what is truly ordained for you. Faith developed in quiet seasons is tested against isolation. You learn to rely on God when there is no one else affirming your progress. You learn to trust Him when circumstances seem stagnant. You learn to obey Him even when results are invisible. This deepened faith sustains you during future trials, ensuring that you continue to move forward even when challenges arise. Quiet seasons also allow for the integration of lessons learned from past experiences. God gives you space to reflect, to process, and to apply wisdom gained from mistakes and successes. This integration prevents you from repeating errors and equips you to maximize opportunities when they arrive. The public breakthrough becomes more than a moment of achievement. It becomes a culmination of preparation, reflection, and divine alignment. During these seasons, God often works on your vision. He clarifies your calling, aligns your goals with your purpose, and adjusts your perspective. Silence removes distractions and forces focus. You learn to differentiate between fleeting desires and enduring callings. Your vision becomes refined, ensuring that when opportunities appear, you pursue what aligns with God's plan rather than what is convenient or popular. Trust, maturity, and discernment developed in silence also strengthen your leadership capacity. Leadership is not just about authority, it is about influence, wisdom, and the ability to guide others effectively. Quiet seasons cultivate these traits by challenging you to lead yourself first. Self-leadership in private prepares you to lead others publicly with confidence and integrity. Patience is another product of quiet preparation. You learn to wait without frustration, to hope without despair, and to persevere without giving up. Patience ensures that when God opens doors, you enter them ready, composed, and capable of stewarding what He has provided. Impatience often leads to missteps, but patience aligns you perfectly with timing that produces maximum impact. These seasons also refine your purpose. You gain clarity about what matters most, what aligns with God's will, and what will produce lasting influence. You learn to let go of what is temporary or distracting and focus on what is eternal and impactful. This alignment ensures that when breakthrough occurs, your actions are intentional, strategic, and effective. In silence, you also develop gratitude for the process. You begin to recognize that every lesson, every delay, every test has a purpose. Gratitude shifts your perspective from frustration to understanding, from impatience to trust, and from fear to confidence. This mindset ensures that public breakthroughs are met with humility and stewardship rather than entitlement and pride. Quiet seasons cultivate perseverance. You learn to continue faithfully even when progress is invisible. You develop resilience against discouragement and sustain commitment to your calling despite obstacles. Perseverance ensures that when opportunities arise, you are ready to capitalize on them fully and responsibly. God's work in silence strengthens your spiritual authority. You learn to discern truth, speak life, and make decisions aligned with divine guidance. Spiritual authority is not given by title or position. It is cultivated in private through obedience, prayer, and character development. This authority ensures that breakthroughs are stewarded with integrity and wisdom. The lessons of trust, maturity, and discernment gained in quiet seasons prepare you for sustainable success. They equip you to handle recognition without arrogance, influence without manipulation, and responsibility without fear. Public breakthroughs become platforms for impact, not sources of instability, because the internal work has been completed quietly, meticulously, and intentionally. A faith developed in silence is resilient. It withstands challenges, adapts to change, and remains steadfast in uncertainty. Maturity ensures that your responses are thoughtful, measured, and grounded in wisdom. Discernment guides your choices, protecting you from distractions, false promises, and misaligned opportunities. Together, these traits ensure that when God's public breakthrough comes, you are not only ready to receive it, but also to steward it for maximum purpose, impact, and alignment with His divine plan. What you don't see God doing now is preparing you for what you will not have to repeat later, and understanding this truth is